Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. We are back. You guys probably were hoping for something different, but nope, it's us. Once again, we're back here in the studio, and we're excited about Mark Bassett being with us. Mark, my co-host, is here in live and living color.
I'm
Mark.
always here spiritually and emotionally, Kareem, but physically I'm here today.
You are physically in the house.
Yeah.
So we're glad to have you today, Mark. You were just coming from where now?
Well, I was in 7 different states.
7 different states.
Yeah, but primarily North Carolina, the beach in North Carolina. So.
The beach in North Carolina. North Carolina is kind of like a coastal state. So you're just on the beach in North Carolina.
Holden Beach, North Carolina.
Holden Beach.
Southern part of North Carolina, about an hour north of Myrtle Beach and about an hour south of Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay, so why Holden over Myrtle?
Well, my parents own a beach house in Holden Beach. It's much more a beach house. It's their.
Hey, John, do your parents own a beach house in anywhere?
No, but my great grandma does.
Your great grandma does.
Yeah, there you go.
We go visit.
That sounds like the Seinfelds. Anyway.
Hey, my great grandmother owned a house across the street from a huge ravine, a bayou, as a matter of fact, down in.
It's kind of like a beach.
So, I mean, the story there is my parents, when they lived in Hawaii back in the early 70s, bought a house for like $50,000 and thought they were going to retire there, decided they weren't, sold it in the early 1990s for a huge profit because Hawaii's real estate had, and used that money to build. At that point, Holden Beach wasn't very developed.
So they got in early.
Got in right place, right time, frankly. Yeah.
So once again, they're going to have a huge home while they sell it and go to some other deserted.
Well, they've tried to sell it before. It didn't. At this point, it's not that huge a home on this beach, bigger homes and everything. And the reality is like my kids and my sister's kids grew up going there because we would go there for summer vacation every year. So there's a lot of sentimental value in the family. It's too small. I mean, it's only got 4 bedrooms, so it's not this big mansion.
It's too small.
Yeah. When you have 7 kids, it's too small. We actually have to rent the house next door to it to fit everybody.
So you have to rent the house next door to it in addition.
Yeah.
Do you guys see the yin and yang here? And when I say the yin and yang, I'm not just talking about me and Mark. I'm talking about me and John. John and I versus Mark. The yin and yang here. But this is what makes life beautiful.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is, Kareem, I mean, life is just a crazy ride. And so like 15 years ago, I mean, I'm in a much different place, than 15 years ago. I mean,
that's just what do you mean by that?
I was, a mid-level guy at Dow, making good money. But when you have 7 kids and you're sending them to like out-of-state schools and university, private universities, literally, my second daughter, I took a full loan out on her first two tuitions.
Wow.
With no clue of how I was at Boston University. So these are like $50,000 a year. With no clue of how I was going to pay that back. And my career hit just a crazy inflection point where, all of a sudden I could afford it, and it's just,
it's good. It's a good thing. You're a good guy, Mark. Yeah. So I don't mind good things happening to you. But John, you're sitting here listening to the perils of Mark's life.
Trials and tribulation. I got to rent 2 houses.
So he's got to rent 2 houses when he goes on vacation. Not an Airbnb, but 2 houses. Okay.
Yeah. Well, good. It's a good thing. Things are looking up.
So what did you do for the holiday, John?
I went up to my grandma's beach house on Lake Huron and went kayaking.
I'm the only brother up here that does not have a beach house. I want my 40 acres and a mule, I tell you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we went kayaking. We met up with family. It was just hung out for the weekend. It was a good time.
Well, I didn't feel like doing anything for the holiday at all. And it wasn't that there are a lot of people, and this is actually kind of an interesting thought inflection here. There are a lot of people who feel that Black folks shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July because
really.
Yeah. And but I understand.
I kind of get it.
I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But because in 1776, when the United States was declaring their independence, we were still enslaved, and
Mhm.
the hardships of our people were very we're still continuing, for another 100 years or so. And so there are a lot of people who have strayed away from celebrating July 4th as Independence Day, and really are more tuned into June 19th with the signing of the Emancipation, eventually June 19th, as we talked before on the show about it. And I'm not the Facebook, the wealth gap explained. The wealth gap explained in real time is what they said right there. I
Was
agree
that
with
anonymous?
you.
The anonymous user.
The anonymous individual. I agree with you 100%. But I'm the type of person that I think that both of them are uniquely important to history, to especially Black American history, because having a Juneteenth where we were free and we were not slaves, because before we were slaves, we were free. Okay. And we talked a little bit about that here. And slavery was the great construct, the social experiment that stuck, that was a way to divide our people into classes. And so I think that both are important. I'm glad to be free from slavery, but I'm also glad to be free from tyranny and oppression, and have the freedom to express my religious beliefs as well. And I really don't understand how one completely stops the other. They are both unique parts of our history, and I think that I celebrate both of them. This particular holiday, I wouldn't feel like celebrating nothing. I just wanted to veg and do nothing. Ended up in Muskegon on the beach.
There you go. You were on the beach too, Kareem.
I wasn't in my beach house though. That's the problem. But we're working on that one, Mark. I'm gonna hang out with Mark and Mark's friends, and eventually we're gonna be friends, and we're gonna be friends with his friends. And I'm gonna tell you, John, we're gonna end up with that beach house. All right, but it was a great holiday. We didn't cook any barbecue. We did absolutely zero cooking. Nobody felt like it. So we didn't do any of those things, but it was just a great time to be off, and just kind of spend some time really with immediate family and friends. But I want to talk, because there's a lot that has been happening, and we got to get going, because we will get caught in conversation in 3.5 seconds. But so much is going on in our nation, and I want us to kind of start talking about that. First of all, our heart and prayers go out to Carlos Santana. We're praying that he is doing well. He fell here in Michigan, and they say Detroit, but it's actually Pine Knob, which is more like Clarkston kind of ish. And so I didn't know that they went back to the name Pine Knob.
I didn't either. I saw in the news. I saw the report this morning because I'm a huge Carlos Santana fan.
Right.
I saw Clarkston. So
yeah. So I thought it was still the DTE Energy or Theater, but I guess they're back to Pine Knob. And so it was there he was performing, and I love Santana. I've come to love his play and his style of music. And he fell out on stage, and I got that information real time because I had a friend that was at the concert. Like, oh my gosh, we're at this concert and Carlos Santana, so I felt like I had breaking news that I was able to share with the world. But going off the stage, he gave a thumbs up, and so people are hopeful that he's doing well. And I'm hoping that that we hear some updates in terms of his health. There has been,
you got these 60s and 70s rock stars that are still touring. I mean, those guys have got to be in their 70s and 80s, and it's a grind.
I think he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
And so to be doing what he's doing, city after city, tour after tour, over and over,
that takes life.
Absolutely. And then when you look at the entire nation is in a heat wave, that's an outdoor venue.
Yeah.
I'm sure heat exhaustion probably played a good factor in it, because he's probably doing more tequila and bourbon than he's doing water. Hopefully that's not the case. I'm just joking, but hopefully he gets well and he recovers well. Our Facebook user, the masked man out there, says Black people celebrating America is complicated. We've always been patriotic. We love a country that doesn't love us back. It's hard. And that's a real statement. I'm not sure. Well, we've gotten some insight into who this anonymous person is, because we love a country, so we know that this brother is African American. So welcome to the conversation, my friend. We thank you for your opinion, but I agree it is at times a very difficult situation, because there's so many things that I love about America. Someone said to me, well, if you hate the country, get out of the country. I'm like, I never said that I hated America, but sometimes
There's things that could be better.
absolutely,
Sure.
and there's
like
treatments,
anything,
and we
so,
want some equality in this
right.
thing.
Yep.
That's all. So I love what our country is for. My forefathers, my grandfather was in World War One, I think, two,
probably.
yeah, World War II.
Yeah.
And my family's military, so we serve our country well, and I've come to love this place. And as I travel the world, I can't think of very many other places other than Madrid, Spain,
when you get to,
that I'd want to live.
When you travel the world, without a doubt, this country has got a lot of flaws.
Absolutely.
A lot of flaws. But I think when you travel all over the world, you realize, this is a very special place, and there's a lot more good than bad. And I prefer to focus on the good and work on a few things that we can to try to improve them.
Mark, it's good to focus on the good when you got beach houses. I mean, ain't nobody trying to focus on the bad.
We talked about this one other time. No matter how much money you have or don't have, everyone's got issues. So no one's got living a perfect life.
Want rich man issues. Let's switch for a week. What do you say, John? We will switch for a week.
Well,
go ahead.
Kind of going on what Mark was saying is, I think that a lot of the issues that we have, we need to come at fixing them from a position of, we love this country and we want it to be better. We don't hate on this country. We don't hate this country for its flaws. We love this country and we want to rectify those flaws.
And I think that that's good. Coming from a population of people who are often on the negative side of that, sometimes I hate this country. I love this country, but sometimes I hate this country. I hate the fact that, and I love, trust me, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in any other country than America. But being honest, traveling the world and seeing other places, I would never want to live in Asia. My time in China has brought me to a place
I don't even like to go there anymore,
that I'm good on that place. Yeah. And the treatment of blacks, unless you're a celebrity, is not that great. So I'm not trying to roll up over there either. But going to other countries where race is not as big an issue as it has become here in the United States is refreshing. Going to places where you are just another individual in the crowd is very refreshing.
And where would you say that is from your perspective?
I'll tell you, the place that I have, I never thought that there was anywhere else that I could actually live until I spent a great deal of time. I'd been to Spain a couple of times before. This time in Madrid, I spent a greater period of time in Madrid. Mm-hmm. And instead of going with an athlete or with some event, or I just kind of went as a person, and it was nice. And I honestly found myself extending time to stay there. I was falling in love with the country, the climate, the people, the humidity. There was the old school, or the old Spain that you could enjoy right there, and then go around the corner and you could be in a more westernized experience. Mm-hmm. It was the first time that I actually felt at home outside of the United States. And so that's my 2 cents. But I want to talk. So coming up, we have and I think it's an interesting thing for us to take a look at, because there's some similarities here and some very big differences in terms of some things that have taken place. So we're going to take them in stride. The Highland Park Massacre. And those of you who are listening, if you're listening here on WSGW here in the city of Saginaw, 100.5 or 790 AM, or if you're listening with us in Joliet, Louisiana, Joliet, Illinois.
They're going to be offended by that. They're not Cajuns up there. Yeah.
We sure do feel sorry for you, Joliet. No, charges to the head, not to the heart. But if you're listening to us in Joliet, Illinois, WJOL, we certainly want to thank you for this. But two interesting situations that took place, and I think it's interesting. The first in Highland Park, which is really about an hour, 65 miles probably from Joliet. I know that because I've been to Highland Park before, and I have friends when I was at Michigan State going to college that lived in Highland Park. And so it is a town, very small town, very close-knit area community, and so they just had this experience that the rest of the world has been experiencing, this a mass murder. They're at a parade, and in the middle of doing what we normally do, Mark, that's the thing that's so afraid, that's so fearful. And I think that's the power, I guess, of terrorism, is that it invades the spaces of the things that
Where you think you're safe.
where you think you're safe.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, how many times have it would be like, the Christmas Day parade or the Memorial Day parade or just out at the fireworks, and suddenly a masked person comes out of nowhere and just starts shooting guns. And in that particular, 7 people have now died. Additional person has died of their wounds, succumbed to their wounds, but 7 people dead. And I think they said up to 45 individuals either shot or killed. That's a lot of terror. And so our heart and our thoughts and our prayers are with those individuals that are in Highland Park. But the thing that is really interesting to me is why is this stuff happening more often? Because this guy is clearly a whack job. We understand that. So we're not talking about gun issues here.
Yep.
Okay, so this is not a gun issue. But why are these things happening? It seems to be more prevalent than they were before.
Just something that struck me about this one in particular is, in recent years, whenever something like this happens, the media has tried to not mention the name, not show the face. And I think that that's a good policy to have. We don't publicize, we don't venerate
Copycats.
this individual. But in this one, his face has been everywhere. His name has been everywhere. I don't know why I don't know why. It seems so different.
Eventually, they all come out. I mean, the name always comes out. Pictures always, the kid that went down to the church in, was it South Carolina?
Yeah.
You knew.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty quickly, I
mean, because you can research. We're information society, so we're getting the information now. But what's interesting, to the point that you're making, I almost did not want to mention his name. Honestly, I did not want to mention his name today. I was like, I don't even want to give him credence. I don't want to give him 5 minutes of fame or celebrity, or to make this an issue about him. And so if you look, I sent you some notes over. I intentionally listed the individuals' names, but I didn't want to mention his name. I put it down anyways. But why were you saying that? You were going to say what, John?
Well, I just think that it's interesting how different the coverage of this particular event has been from events that are like it in the past. And I don't know why. I can't think of a possible reason, but I think that the policy of not mentioning name, not showing the face, or at least as little as possible. Yeah, it'll come out once or twice, but it has been at the front of every newscast. And I don't know why it's different.
I think one of the things my wife and I have this debate about, are there actually more crazy people today than there were like 100 years ago? I actually believe that there's not.
You believe there's not,
but she believes that there is. And my theory is that there's really not. I think we're just way more aware of them than we used to be, because of the flow of information. And so I believe that like serial killers have always existed. We just didn't know what they were, and you could never connect the dots before, and now you can. I think these things, it's become kind of in vogue for these crazy people to make a statement. This is their chance to make a statement. So it's a bit of a copycat kind of thing. I think it would be interesting. Again, I've never looked at the data. It would be interesting. I've got this perception that they come in waves, and they die down again, then they come in waves again.
I'd be interested in seeing that, because I honestly think that we're crazier than we've ever been as a nation. I don't think that we are mentally well. And that's probably something that has always existed, because we haven't done very well with mental health issues in our nation.
They were typically swept under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at incarceration and mental health, when they closed down the mental health institutions, all of our criminal systems and our prisons
filled
up. So there is a correlation there. But I think that we are in a place, and it's interesting because we've seen China and South Korea and North Korea, Asian countries, go through pandemics before. For us, at least for me, what we have seen with this COVID thing and how it played out from 2020 to about the end of 2021, really, was something that was very unique that I had never seen in my lifetime. And I honestly, and this is so funny, it was so traumatic, having everything being isolated from families, living in pods, not being able to visit grandparents. I was actually thankful that my grandparents were not alive during the pandemic, because the emotional toll that I saw friends and family go through during that period of time, not being able to be with their family and loved ones, was horrific. I wouldn't want to be in it.
But I think when you think about it, this culture, like the cultures you mentioned, China, Northern Asian cultures,
Yeah.
Asian cultures in general, are just so fundamentally different than like our culture. And like, yes, they've been through pandemics before, but those cultures are much more kind of what I'd say structured.
Absolutely.
And the good of the society comes first. They're also very hierarchical, and I will listen to my parents. I will listen to my bosses. I have to do this for the good of the society, which our country is not like that at all.
At
It's
all.
very individualistic.
So
Yep.
that leads to the issues that
Yep.
we had. I mean, come on. We had people that tried to kidnap the governor in Michigan. I mean, we got the whole January 6th insurrection thing that's going. There have been things that have happened, and I think it's because people were at their tipping point, because we don't have a society that really respects leadership and our elders, and so we've been taught to do what makes us feel good. You know, there were some things that I would never do as a kid because my grandparents were, I wouldn't want my grandparents to ever know I did that. So I didn't want to get caught doing it. So there are those differences.
Yeah, I think that is definitely like, and you've got, we're going to talk in the second half about the role of the church.
Yeah.
Like I grew up going to church every day. We still are, not every day, every week. I still practice. I couldn't even think about not going to church.
It was such a fundamental part.
And I'll be really honest, like I go to church and it's not like I'm really moved by it necessarily, but I would not go to church, if you know what I mean. But whereas I think, like my kids, none of them are practicing. None of them.
But I think that straying away has brought us to a place, regardless of what people want to say about church, for me, it was a place that you could reset. And so I don't think that we have those norms that are so important. We don't get together with key family members and spend time with seniors who help us process things. And for 2 years being locked down, I think all of us are a little bit left of center on this crazy button. And we've been talking about that. And so I think that these types of things are happening because we are not well. I think
I for certainly, we're going through a really tough time as a society right
as
now.
a society,
between the pandemic, just kind of the really vitriolic dialogue that goes on in politics, in the media, in social media. It's very divisive,
very divisive.
Very
and I just don't think that we're well. And so I think that this kind of craziness, I think though they've always been there, I think that these issues are not true, are not normal. Now, that was Highland Park. They have that guy in custody. We're not going to say his name. We'll keep his name as he's this guy who committed this heinous crime. But he is now being charged 7 counts of first-degree murder. Pretty much life in prison is what will happen with this guy. And when we come back from this conversation, and I'm just going to set this up, there's another guy that I think it was Akron, Ohio, Robert Cremo. No. Oh, shoot, I said the guy. We don't know who he is. Anyway,
I can edit that out.
Screwed it up.
I can edit that out.
Edit it out. We don't want it to go out. But anyways, Jalen Walker. Okay, he's in Akron. This is the guy that's in Akron. I had said the other guy's name. Jalen Walker. And we're going to talk about the difference between Jalen Walker's situation and the situation with the other guy, and see the differences between the two. But I want to give those victims, I want to say their name in the closing moments of this first segment, because I think that it's important that we have to remember that these crimes are not victimless, but they have people, loved ones, and family that are important to us. And so I just wanted to say their names: Catherine Goldstein, 64 years old, Irina and Kevin McCarthy, 35 and 37 years old, respectively. Jacqueline Sondheim, 63, Stephen Strauss, 88, Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza, 78. All of those are individuals who have succumbed to their wounds as it relates to what took in Highland, over in Chicago, on the outskirts of Chicago, Highland Park. So we want you guys to keep them in prayer. We'll be back with more United Shades of Grey.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray. You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and we're back with more United Shades of Gray. I'm in the studio with the producer, John B., and also my co-host, Mark Bassett. Mark B. John B. and Mark B. You sound like a 1980s male singing group.
Jan and Dean.
But before the break, we were talking, and I wanted to talk a little bit. We started talking about Jayland Walker. We talked about the massacre that took place in Highland Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. And so I wanted to bring up Jayland Walker because Jayland Walker, again, his parents were saying this is not the Jayland we knew. There's something wrong with him. He's not, something's not right, is what his family said post what took place. But as young man that was killed in Akron, 8 police officers, let it loose, 60 rounds or 60 wounds. This young man experienced.
Need to fire. This is crazy.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Shot 60 times after fleeing a traffic stop. And in this course, he as he fled in what they consider a low speed chase, it is stated that he allegedly took a shot or fired at police officers in this chase, which I'm thinking like, okay, if you're going to end this is why it should have probably ended then. Somebody's driving down the street, shooting gun bullet, shooting out of the vehicle. It does not. They pursue, they continue. When they finally catch up with the guy, he jumps out of the car, and I saw the video of this, and it was just different to me. And I was like, something ain't right here. He jumps out, and he has an entire ski mask that he pulled over his head, and he begins to run. And as he runs, he gets shot 60 times. Now, officers have said, we thought that he was turning around to us. So some of what has been and is being reported, still is under investigation. That's why those officers have been put on administrative leave. But it's interesting. Once again, in America, we're seeing this, I think this duplicit situation that occurs in our nation where this young black kid, he goes out there, he's shooting a gun, he does whatever, he's not caught by the police, but he's shot and he's killed by the police. Whereas this young white kid, and these things are days apart. If I remember correctly, outside of Illinois, he is, he kills 7 people, wounds 30 some odd other people, and he's able to be obtained. Now, what was interesting is this dude had been planning this for a while. The guy out in Illinois, the attire, just as a woman, planned this. Makeup, hair, covered tattoos.
The sad thing is he's had previous run-ins with the police.
Absolutely.
Threats of violence, and still was, despite their laws, was still able to buy fire. It's automatic weapons.
If there is a conversation about an automatic, that would be it.
That's it. That person should never have one.
He is the textbook case
of this guy should never have a gun.
Which
never
was
be able to buy a gun.
He said he was going to kill everybody in his family. They went in, broke in, got guns, not guns, initially knives and a sword. And so they understood that he was a threat, but yet this kid was able to buy a gun
legally.
But it goes back to this thread that I'm talking about. And we're going to only talk about this for a couple of minutes, because what I really want to talk about is what role does the church play? And the reason I ask this, and I want your input out there, those of you listening, and I want you all to think about this. With everything that's happening and everything that's taking place, the thing that we have not done very often or very much of is pray as a nation. And we are all men of faith to one degree or another. And how does faith play a role in what's going to take place? Now, I'll tell you, there's another black man. My issue with this is that there's another black man who sits in a situation. Nobody dies except the person who was in the situation. There's another situation of a Caucasian man who was murdered, 7 people, multiple people wounded, and he still lives to tell the story, or at least to be sentenced in prison. there is an issue that exists here, and we can ignore that issue and say that there's not a need for change. But there is something that is systematically wrong. And I say systematically because it continues to happen over and over again, no matter what the situation. I've seen videos, and you've seen them where, you know, police officers are wrestling to the ground a white man with a gun who just told him he's going to beat the police officers up, but he lives to tell the story. And those same things are not happening. So there is a conversation that has to be taking place in our nation. We can continually say these are just, you know, incidents, isolated
One-offs
incidents,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
one-offs.
Yeah.
But there's a problem that needs to be addressed. But I want to talk a little bit about today. And the reason I want to do this is because I was asked, and I'll be very transparent in a couple of minutes. And I want to invite you guys into this conversation, and hopefully those that are watching via social media and those that are hear this in when it airs on the radio. I've been asked, and I'll be very honest, since May of 2020, there is a lot that has happened. In March, you don't even recognize this, but you challenged me in some ways in our friendship. The murder of George Floyd changed me in a way that I can't really explain. Yes, I can, because I'm overhearing and seeing the same narrative take place for so long. And what I recognized for a long time is that the only difference between myself and many of these young men that are being, you know, Maud Arbery, you know, Braun, all of these individuals who ended up murdered in these police situations, there's not much difference between me. You know, if I put on a suit, I'm one individual, but if I take that suit off and I put on a hoodie and some sweatpants, I become that individual. And with George Floyd, it was just the fact that we had an opportunity with a camera to see what took place in broad daylight, and everybody saw it. And I remember waking up the next day emotional and just like really broken by the fact that we could have a system where someone could die so violently at the hands of someone who was supposed to protect and serve. And I remember asking the question, and I'm going to say it now, but I'm going to delete the word because we're going to be fined by the FCC. But I said, when are we stopped? When are we ever going to not be your N-words? And I meant that. Because Michael Jordan and you know, even Kobe Bryant alluded to it. They're amazing. There are heroes on the court, but if they come off the court and they're in sweatpants and a sweatshirt, they become another threat to society in many people's eyes. And it was a dangerous place. But anyways, my point is, during that period of time, I didn't hear from any of my, being a pastor, I didn't hear from any of my brothers of faith except for one gentleman, one of my white brothers reached out. I didn't hear from any of the other people that were continually trying to have prayer circles and things. And so I really was like, look, I'm over this. Like, I don't want to pray with you. If you can't stand up for me, I'm not kneeling down with you. And that's kind of where I was. And I met Mark. I met you at that point in time. That's probably a little of the edge that you got when we met Mark. Because we did.
Like I said, that didn't bother me at all, man.
But I think that was a part of the edge that we met when we met in August.
Yep.
And I asked you, why do you want? That's all of these things are going on. You got to think, as men of faith, we carry the burden of not just ourselves, but burdens of the church and the community and faith, and all that stuff becomes important. And I was going through a very difficult point because I didn't want to pray with white people.
I could just be another guy I'm running a company and it's the fad. And why would I want to spend my time? Why would you want to spend your time with some guy that's just, you know, playing a game to check a box?
Absolutely.
I get that. 100% get that.
And so I didn't want to pray with white America. I didn't want to pray with my evangelical brothers who seemingly to me sided with a presidential candidate.
Don't get me going.
You know, you know, and we've talked about this, Mark, who just seemed to be like, he's racist, he's misogynist, he's sexist. How in the world can we stand for this guy and nothing? And so when I look at that, I was really angry, and it took me a lot of times. And so I was approached recently to do a unity prayer circle in our ministry. And I'm like going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to pray this. but something changed me. But you were very key. You came in that period of time. And one of the reasons I was like, I'm not calling, God's like, you need to call him and talk to him and pray with him. I'm like, I'm not doing those things. I'll text him. And then you would call me back after we would talk. And so God used you in many ways for me to realize that the vineyard that is out there is bigger than race. It's bigger than, it's bigger than the issues that we deal with. It's bigger than politics. And he's a God who doesn't see color. And so I wanted to just kind of have a conversation and opening up for the floor, and just ask, what role does the church today play in restoring America, if there is such a thing that should take place?
That's a big question.
I know it's a big question.
Well, I mean, I think the issue we have today, I mean, should it play a role? Could it play a role? Those are two different questions. I think for sure the church could play a role, because the fundamental teachings of every church is, we're all human and we should treat each other like we would want ourselves treated. That's the foundation of almost every religion, frankly, whether they're Christian or non-Christian. It's treat your neighbor as though you want your treat yourself. And so I think the church could play a huge role in that. I think the issue here about that is kind of what in your pre-notes, what is the relevance of the church today?
Yes.
And the issue I think we have is the church in our society is far less relevant than when I was a child. So 30, 40 years ago, because, it's just obvious. There's far fewer people in the pews. And frankly, the younger generation largely isn't in the pew. And, I already talked about it. Like, I go to church just because that's what I do.
Right.
And even when I'm struggling, and I've actually recommended this to people, like, if you're struggling with a big issue, just go to church, not necessarily to just pray, but to meditate, because there's something about being in that building that brings peace to you. But anyway, I think the issue we have today is the church isn't that relevant, and it doesn't speak to that many people anymore. The people it speaks to tend to be 40 plus, not 40 and below. Now, how do you change that? That's a different question.
I'm interested. John, you are our resident young person in here. I mean, but interesting. And I think that it's important to share, just to be transparent, that you are a PK. You're a pastor kid.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, really? I didn't know
So
that.
you didn't know that.
I did not know
I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad's a pastor at a country church, the standard little white church with the steeple. And we were just talking about what Mark was talking about here. We were just talking about this the other day, that right now, our congregation specifically, but I think this is a problem that a lot of congregations are seeing, is that it's a lot of older people. And right now, my dad is in a difficult situation of trying to convince them, because we've had an influx of younger people. And when I say young, I mean probably 45 and below.
Right.
And we've had a recent 4 different families, which is big for our church, showing up semi-regularly. And there's a little bit of a divide there. And my dad's in the position
What's the divide, out of curiosity?
This is what it is. My dad's been trying to convince these older people that, no, the next generation of this church family is not going to share your last name.
Right.
That's what this is. And I think that can be expanded to, when you're in a church, when you're in a congregation like that, it is a family. And they might not all share your last name. They might not all look like you, but you are there, you are together. And I think that is one of the biggest powers of the church as a community builder, is you are a faith family.
Yeah.
No matter what you look like, what your last name is, anything.
Right.
You all have this shared set of beliefs.
And I think that's important. And I just want to bring to point Erica Taylor, who's listening out there. She made the point that what scared her during that period of time we were talking about young Black men is that she has 3 Black boys who fit the description. They're comfortable in sweatpants and caps and hats. And it just is it's a fear.
To me, as a person, obviously, of a different demographic, that's been kind of the most eye-opening thing for me. It's just something I never thought about, because I don't live with it. I don't deal with it. Just, young gentlemen, we both know Frank Saunders.
Yeah.
People like okay, I have to act differently. Like it would
Yeah.
never even dawn on me.
Yeah.
Or like my daughter-in-law, who's Hispanic and very clearly Hispanic.
Right.
She, like when she goes into high-end stores, has to act a little differently. And it's just not something I ever really appreciated. And
Yeah.
so it gives me a lot more kind of empathy, I think, for
And
the
it's different.
situation.
And so Larry said, I feel you, Kareem. I had a hard time too. It opened my eyes to how we were taught in schools in America and how we are indoctrinated and just accepted it. But so my issue becomes this. I sense God pushing my heart beyond where I am. And honestly, for 2 years, there were prayer meetings and there's prayer meetings at the police department. I wasn't going. I don't hate white people. I don't dislike white people. But it's hard for me to be fake. I can't be fake about anything. So who I am, you're gonna get, right? And it was a struggle to say that you want to stand with me in prayer against the evils of this world, but you don't want to stand with me when you see me hurting or people being beat down who look like me. And that is a problem. And I think in America, when we think about these conversations, we have to understand what role religion has played. And that's why I tell people I'm not a religious person whatsoever. I'm not a religious person. I'm all about relationship, my personal relationship with God, because religion has played such a hard place and part of American history. A lot of slavery was continued through the eyes of religion. Slave owners using certain slaves and giving them a word to preach about, being subject to the master. And it's a hard place. So it's hard for me as a pastor to reconcile that type of treatment from religion. So I don't do well with religion. I often
It's
don't.
interesting. Someone that doesn't do well with religion is actually a pastor. I find that's an interesting.
No, it's
kind
not,
of
because
dichotomy.
I don't think that religion has, being a pastor has anything to do with religion. And I think the problem is that as people in society, we've looked at what should have been relational and we've called it religion. And I think that religion is what man does for man. It's the thing that often divides us. But relationship, the spiritual relationship that we have with our Heavenly Father, when people have relationship with him, those are people that I can care about. Mark, the thing that I liked about you was that you weren't an overly religious man in terms of your conversation, but you were a man who was on a spiritual journey. And that spiritual connection was the thing that helped me to overcome any of the differences or the things where we didn't see eye to eye. And so I asked this question because America is stuck on religion, and religion is dying fast. We see so much, like you were talking about, you're having some people coming in that are 40 years and older. You're talking about the Catholic Church. Is the Catholic Church even going to be around in the next 10 years? Is a question that I would have to ask.
Well, I think for sure. I mean,
Okay.
It's been around for a couple thousand years, so I wouldn't give up on it quite yet. I do think it needs to change, obviously, though.
Yeah, but the church will be around. Is it around just because it is an artifact that we want to keep alive, or is it because it is effective in its communicating the message of Christ? And I don't think it is. And so, we had this whole thing.
The data would support you because it's going down.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's because people are now being freed by understanding the word of God for themselves. For so long, we've taken these tours where we've, just kind of believe what people have taught. We can read now. We can research now. And I think that it's important. But when I look at this and I look at the role that faith plays in healing a community, we talk about how do we bridge gaps? But what role does faith play in bridging and connecting the dots between Black and white America or brown America in our communities?
Well, for sure, I think it can play a role. I don't think that's the only avenue because when it's all comes back to it, I think it's what you said, it's relationship. And two people, religion or faith or spirituality can be a platform on which you can build that relationship, but there's other ways of building that relationship as well.
Yes, Tip Good, he's a reoccurring co-host here. She said he looks familiar. Right? Yeah, so he's been around a little bit. But how do you see the difference? Because when we look at it, In America, on Sunday morning, 11 a.m., probably the most segregated time in our world. We work together. We often play together. We go to a soccer league together. But on Sunday, we go to our prospective places, and they are usually not the same place. John, what do you see growing up as a young man? Is religion or church? I'll say church because I hate religion. Is church relevant?
Yes.
How so?
Church is relevant on an individual level, and this comes back to my personal religious beliefs and those that I have in the church that I've grown up in, and I don't think I fully embraced it until not too long ago. I fully kind of understood it, but no, it is all about a personal relationship in a different way, in that church is the place where God speaks to his people. Church is the place where you hear his word, where you receive his body and blood in the sacrament of communion, if you practice that. And that is the relevance of church. Is you can talk to God all you want. You can open your Bible and point to a random word, and you can believe that that's God speaking to you. But Paul, the Apostle Paul, teaches that faith comes from hearing the word. And that's what church is. That is where you receive God, is what church is. And I think that it is very relevant on a personal level. I think it's very relevant on a cultural and community building level as well, as I said previously.
What do you say to someone who says, I don't have to be in a church to worship God?
I respectfully disagree. I think that the worship of God is receiving from God. I don't think we can give God anything. But I think that the worship of God is receiving his gifts, and those gifts are delivered in church. So that's my personal belief, and that's the significance that I believe church holds, and that's why I think I see, at least in my very narrow personal experience, that the church is treading water, if not growing, with the most recent generation, but it's growing in a different way. It's not growing through family ties. It's growing through people coming to the church.
What's interesting to me is this evolution of these mega churches, usually ecumenical or Protestant based, of like these just giant congregations. A lot of it, sometimes I wonder, how spiritual is it really? Or is this just it's a cool place to go and hang out and meet people and listen to some cool music? I don't know, but
well, I don't want our churches to become our hangout spots where we just it's a groovy place.
Exactly.
But this is the thing. This is my thing, and we only have 2 minutes left. And so I want to say this, and you guys have any closing thoughts before we close out? Because I know this is my thought. As we look for a way to unite our country, and this is United Shades of Gray, Conversations on Race in America, I think it's important that we give faith another try. And that's irrespective of religion. Religion is, I think, created to divide us all. Catholics, Protestants, whatever. It's crazy. If you are a person who names the name of Christ, and I want to say there's a number of groups that are around that are holding these prayer circles, trying to unite our nation, and we're getting ready to go into a very political divided season. I think it's important that we are governed by our faith, and I want to challenge everyone that is out there that is listening. Let's not get caught up into our politics to a degree that our politics outweigh our faith and our spiritual beliefs. But let's allow our spiritual beliefs to really begin to shape our politics. When I was saying that I was really over trying to have prayer sessions with white evangelicals, it was because I believe their politics took precedence over their faith. And so in this season, as if we're looking for healing, if we're looking to bring together, if we're looking for any type of unity, we've got to understand that Christ has to be at the center of that effort. I want to thank you guys for allowing us to take a journey down a different path that we don't often take. But I think that it's important as we begin to talk about healing America. 2 Chronicles 7 and 14. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven. I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land. So we've got to get back to relationship and leave religion out of the place. Thank you, guys. God bless you all. Grace and peace.